everybody, this is Mrs. Luna from Luna's Lit Lab, brought to you by Reading Rev. And today I have a special surprise for your teacher that I need your help with. I'm going to surprise your teacher by teaching an entire lesson. Just you and I, and your teacher gets to go to the back of the room, put his or her feet up, drink the coffee, and just relax. I'm going to need 2 volunteers to help me with this project. The first person is going to be my tech team, and you're in charge of pausing and restarting the video throughout the lesson. The second person is going to be our discussion director. That person is going to help me lead discussions. So after we pause the video, you're in charge of leading a class discussion and making sure everybody fills out their worksheet. Are you ready? Okay, everybody take out your flap book. This is called a Fab 4 flap book. And the Fab 4 means the fabulous 4 comprehension strategies that will help us comprehend what we read the most. So as we go through the story, we're going to stop to make predictions, ask questions, clarify, and at the end we're going to summarize. You're also going to need your Alfred Nobel packet out. Go ahead and put your name on it now. As we go through the lesson, we're going to be completing this packet together. We're going to start with me teaching you 3 really important vocabulary words. As I teach the vocabulary word, the tech team is going to pause the video so that you can complete each vocabulary box. We also are going to learn several words that I'm not directly teaching you before the lesson. As we read, we're going to find words that we may not know, and I'm going to teach you some strategies to figure out those words without the help of your teacher or a dictionary. Then, at the end of the story, we're going to have 2 objectives. We're going to summarize the story using this template. So instead of using your Fab 4 summarizer box, you're going to actually do it on this page so you have a little more room. And then you're going to talk about the theme of the story. And our discussion director is going to help you navigate and orchestrate a class discussion and come up with the theme of Alfred Nobel. Your teacher is going to email me and tell me how you did. So let's make your teacher proud and give your teacher a much needed, well-deserved break. Are you ready? All right, join me inside the story, Alfred Nobel, the man behind the Peace Prize. Today, we're going to read Alfred Nobel, the man behind the Peace Prize, written by Kathy-Jo Wargin and illustrated by Zachary Pullen. If you love this book as much as I do, stay tuned for Nobel Peace Prize Study Unit. Our key objectives today is to tackle vocabulary. I'm going to teach you 3 important words, and then I'm going to show you how we can determine the meaning of a new word just by looking at the text itself, without a teacher teaching us or going to a dictionary. We're also going to talk about the theme of the story and summarize the text. The words I'm going to choose for you today are high-frequency academic words that you'll be able to use in your own conversations and writing. The first word I'm going to teach is ignite. Say ignite. Nice. Ignite means to catch fire. Alfred began trying different ways to ignite nitroglycerin safely. Ignite is a verb. It's something that you would do. And a synonym is inflame. An antonym is extinguish or to put out the fire. What's the word? Ignite. Add ignite to your graphic organizer now. The next word is tragedy. A tragedy is an event causing great suffering, destruction, and distress. Have you ever experienced a tragedy? The tragedy proved one thing to Alfred. He must make nitroglycerin safer yet. A tragedy is an event, so it is a noun. It's kind of like a disaster and not at all like a fortune. Our final word is legacy. Legacy is something passed down after your life. So, on that very day, Alfred Nobel, the man who loved literature and poetry and the art of discovery, left a legacy to be remembered always. A legacy is a noun. It's kind of like an inheritance. The opposite of legacy would be something useless. Have your grandparents left a legacy for you? So it's great when a teacher teaches you exactly the words that you need to know, right? Just like we just did. But so often we come to words in text that we don't really know what the meaning of. And the first step is for us to actually just acknowledge that and realize, I don't know what that word means. There are several ways that we can figure out the meaning of unknown words while we're reading. Here's the first. Sometimes the author actually gives you the definition or explains what the word means right in the sentence or in the sentence after it. We just have to observe and notice that that's what's happening. Kind of like defining it, sometimes the author gives us another word that means the exact same within the sentence, so I can infer and figure out what the first word means. And sometimes they do exactly the opposite and give us the antonym. It signals us that it's opposite of what this word might mean. Sometimes we know part of the word, and so we can use the word parts to figure out the meaning. Do you know what the base or root word means? Do you know what the prefixes and suffixes mean? If so, you can figure out the definition. And finally, sometimes the author doesn't give us any of those clues, but we can infer or figure out just by what's happening in the text or happening in the story around that word. So as we read today's story, you're going to take out your vocabulary CLUNK worksheet, and you're going to add the words that we figure out into your chart. Let's get started. Alfred Nobel, the man behind the Peace Prize. The hammer dropped with a bang. Upon the anvil was a drop of liquid nitroglycerin. Startled, Alfred Nobel began to think about the power of this liquid. So nitroglycerin is an explosive liquid, right? And an anvil is the tool that metal workers use to shape really hot metal. So it's that very, very big, heavy chunk of metal down below in that picture. A liquid like this could cause enough force to blast away rock where bridges and roads and railways needed to be built. It could help militaries have safer weapons. Most often, gunpowder was used for these purposes, but it wasn't very safe. Alfred's love of poetry and literature was equal to his love of science and chemistry. Although he hoped to spend his life as a writer, he soon realized that writing and poetry would have to wait. Alfred began trying different ways to ignite nitroglycerin safely. With the help of his father and his brothers Robert and Ludwig, he experimented day and night, sometimes mixing the liquid with gunpowder, which made it easier to handle. So he was trying to ignite nitroglycerin safely, and remember, ignite means to catch fire. What questions do you have so far about the story? Take out your Fab 4 flat book and add a question. Alfred kept testing until he came up with a wooden plug he could fill with gunpowder. He called the plug a blasting cap. It would help builders ignite the nitroglycerin safely. Alfred was pleased. Not long after, Alfred and his brother Emil began to make and sell nitroglycerin in their homeland of Sweden. They called it blasting oil, and orders came in from many places. Just as Alfred hoped, the blasting oil was used to build roads and railways, bridges, ports, and towns. Let's take a look at the word homeland. If homeland is a clunk for me and I don't know what it means, which one of our CLUNK strategies can we use to figure it out? If you said word parts, you're right. I know what the word home means, and I know what the word land means. So your homeland is the land or the country that you were born in. One day in the workshop, Emil and a partner were making some new oil when something went terribly wrong. Boom! Everything exploded, and 5 people were dead, including Emil. Write a prediction now. What do you think Alfred Nobel will do next? The tragedy proved one thing to Alfred. He must make nitroglycerin even safer yet. As the pain of his loss troubled him, Alfred worked day and night. Some days he would feel weak and ill, while others he felt lonely and sad, wanting nothing more than to escape into books or poetry. We know what the word tragedy means. What was Alfred Nobel's tragedy or event that caused him great suffering? Two years after Emil died, Alfred mixed nitroglycerin with sand. This made a paste he could roll into the shape of a rod. He realized such rods could be put into holes, so builders could make blasts happen only where they wanted. The rods would ignite only if they had a blasting cap, making them unlikely to explode on their own. Finally, Alfred Nobel made nitroglycerin safe to use. Alfred named his invention after the Greek word dynamis, which means power. But to the world, Alfred Nobel had invented something called dynamite. This made Alfred wealthy and famous. Everybody knew about Alfred Nobel and his dynamite. If I didn't know what the word famous meant, what could I use as a CLUNK strategy to figure that word out in context? You're right. The author actually explains it and gives us a definition in the very next line. This made Alfred wealthy and famous. Everybody knew. What's the definition of famous? That everybody knows you. Alfred was happy with his success. Most of all, he hoped his inventions would prevent war. He thought that if people were afraid of the harm that explosions could cause, perhaps they would settle things peacefully first. But Alfred was wrong. In many countries, people began to use dynamite to solve problems by hurting others. This made Alfred very sad. Alfred was happy with his success. What does success mean? What CLUNK strategy can I use to figure it out? Yeah, although I don't have a word part or a definition handed right to me, I know that he had been working on this invention and it finally worked and he became wealthy and famous. So we can figure out that success must mean when you reach your goal and get what your desired outcome is. One morning in France, while Alfred was living, people woke to the newspaper headline, "Alfred Nobel is dead!" It reported that Alfred Nobel, the dynamite king, had died of a heart attack. People everywhere were shocked by the news, but nobody was more shocked than Alfred Nobel. His brother Ludwig had recently died. The newspapers had reported it wrong. As Alfred read his own obituary, he realized that others saw him as a man who earned his wealth by inventing ways to injure and kill. For the rest of his days, this made him very sad. The word obituary, he read his own obituary, we can stop and figure out that that must be something in the newspaper that tells about the passing or when people die, right? And that's exactly what it is. So it's a note in the newspaper, and it's usually very positive about what people's accomplishments are. But Alfred Nobel's obituary just said he was a rich guy who got wealthy by inventing something that injured and killed people. Stop. Share with your neighbor what your prediction might be, and then jot down that prediction. What do you think will happen next in your flat book? On December 10th, 1896, Alfred Nobel died a wealthy but lonely man at his home in Italy. He was buried in Sweden. What questions do you have? Jot them down in your flat book now. His friends and family gathered to hear the reading of his will. After money had been given to a few close friends and relatives, an announcement was made. The entire estate of Alfred Nobel, one of the richest men in all of Europe, would be used to create yearly prizes for those who have rendered the greatest services to humankind. I'm not sure what a will is. I know it's someone's name, and I've heard like you have a strong will, but there's lots of meanings for will. So let's see if we can figure out what the meaning of this word is in context. His friends and family gathered to hear the reading of his will after money had been given. So it must be some kind of paper or document that says where his money is going to go. And that's exactly right. A will is a legal document that adults make to say what they want, what their wishes are, and what their wants are after they die. Let's look at the word rendered. One of the richest men in all of Europe would give his wealth to create yearly prizes for those who rendered the greatest services to humankind. We don't have word parts, and the author didn't define it or give us synonyms or antonyms, so this is one that we just have to use our inference or our best guess for. He's giving prizes to people who gave or made the greatest services to humankind. There would be a prize for accomplishments in physics, another for chemical discovery or improvement, a prize for physiology or medicine, and a prize for literature. And last was to be a special prize. It would be a prize for peace. So, on that very day, Alfred Nobel, the man who loved literature and poetry and the art of discovery, left a legacy to be remembered for always, as the man who founded what would become throughout the world known as the Nobel Prizes. What was Alfred Nobel's legacy? What did he pass down after he died for the world to remember him by? Exactly, his Peace Prize and his other Nobel Prizes. And here are just some of the Peace Prize winners. You can find out more at nobelprize.org. If you'd like to find out even more about the laureates that won the Nobel Peace Prize, join us for our Nobel Peace Prize study unit, where you'll even get to nominate a friend for a Nobel Peace Prize. Take a few minutes to think about the story. What questions do you still have, or what would you like to know more about? Our next objective is to summarize this story, and I have a really great, simple way to help us summarize a story. We don't want to retell all of the details. We just want to give a synopsis or a main idea, general summary of the story for someone who hasn't read it. So the strategy somebody wanted, but so then finally can help us. Who is the somebody in our story? You're right. Alfred Nobel is who the story was about. What did Alfred Nobel want? Alfred Nobel wanted to find a way to make nitroglycerin safe. But what was the problem? Yeah, his invention ended up being dynamite, and we know that dynamite isn't always used to solve problems. So, what happened next? Many people used that dynamite to hurt others, and then Alfred read his mistaken obituary and learned that people thought he was just uncaring and wealthy. Finally, what happened at the end of the story? Finally, Alfred left almost all his money to create prizes that honored helpful people. So my summary in just a couple of sentences gives you the general idea or the order of events in what happened in our story. Alfred Nobel wanted to find a way to make nitroglycerin safe, but his invention ended up being dynamite. Many people use dynamite to hurt others. Alfred then read a mistaken obituary and learned people thought he was uncaring and wealthy. Finally, Alfred left almost all of his money to create prizes that honored helpful people. Our final task is to take that summary and to take what we know about that story and to come up with the theme. So just like a theme park, if you ever have been to Disneyland or Orlando Studios, you know that theme parks all have one big idea, right? And a theme park, Disneyland's theme is a kingdom that's magical. So we're going to come up with that idea and say, what was the central message or lesson that the author wanted us to learn after we read this story? What did Alfred Nobel go through in the story that would relate to that message? And what did his actions and decisions in the story help us with that lesson or moral? What did Alfred Nobel do or decide to do that would help us learn that lesson? What challenges or obstacles did he face? How did he overcome them? And what did this story make you feel? How did you relate to it? And how did it resolve? How did it end that conveyed the message of our theme or our moral or our lesson? Here are some common themes and narratives. Do you think any of these would relate to our Alfred Nobel story? Themes of Alfred Nobel. Turn the video off and have a class discussion. See if you can come up with the most important theme or moral or lesson that you as a class learned by reading Alfred Nobel, the man behind the Peace Prize. If you loved this story, then you're going to absolutely love our Nobel Peace Prize study unit. In fact, you will get to read lots of stories about Peace Prize laureates and find out about how people from all around the world have offered peace and kindness and made Alfred Nobel proud. You will even get to nominate someone from your very own class to win your class Nobel Peace Prize. If you'd like to know more, this lesson unit is in our VIP Reading Rev library. Don't forget to buy Alfred Nobel, the man behind the Peace Prize, for your classroom library. Teachers, you can also join our learn more about theme in our VIP library. And if you loved and would like to use the vocabulary templates, check out Pocket Full of Primary. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.